episode 109 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So, today we thought we'd discuss secondhand books. So, every year recently, we have had a very big, well, I'm not going to say every year recently, but usually every once in a while there is a huge book sale based on secondhand books from different sources. So we actually just went to one this past week from the CFUW, that is the Canadian Federation of University Women. So they put out an all-call for like a whole bunch of books. A lot of people donated, and then they sell them for super, super cheap as a fundraiser. Like $1, $2. It's a really good fundraiser, and then we get books for super cheap. So I guess sort of losing the point of the question is, do you buy used books? I know for a fact you do because we went to the book sale. But what are your thoughts on secondhand books?
It's an interesting one because like I love books. Shock, surprise. But I do love new books. I love like having them in really good condition and that kind of stuff too. So I think it took me a little bit to get into secondhand books, but I had to kind of be like, you can't spend every penny you own on books. So you're gonna have to start buying them secondhand because this is getting insane. Kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, now like for new books, I will buy them online. Like not online, but like chapters, bookstores, fresh. And it is usually online because it's free shipping. So I don't often go to the store. I think the last time we went to the store was when Iron Flame was coming out.
Last time you went.
Yeah. Is when we went. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. When we went together, yeah.
Not the last time. Yeah. Yeah. But I do also, like, I'll go to any secondhand store in town, like blanking on the names, but we have
like the
Value
Village.
Stores. Value Village, yeah.
Salvation Army.
That kind of stuff.
Store.
Yeah. And we have an SPCA one. So I'll go to those, and they usually have a book section, and it's usually pretty cheap. I find Value Village is kind of still, like, more than you would think for secondhand books, which is kind of annoying. But a lot of the other stores, they are the, like, $1 or $2 per book kind of thing. So I do go there a lot, and, like, if I see something by an author that I know or a book that I've read, and I'm like, oh, like, there's lots of series that I've read, and I'm like, I'm not going to buy them new, and I'm just going to wait until I stumble across them secondhand kind of thing. So I love secondhand books. What about you?
I sort of agree with you. Like, it's taken me a bit to get into them, and in certain instances, obviously, I still do, like new books. But, like, when we were at the store, that book sale the other day, you know, I found some books that actually I already own, but maybe misplaced my copy, or maybe would like to have an extra copy to loan out to people, or, you know, maybe, you know, just a different cover. So, like, I find that's a really good way to stock up your quote-unquote library.
Yeah, definitely.
And in addition to that, I find I've been seeing a lot on my Facebook, like the book groups and stuff, people thrifting for books and then finding like original prints of things or like original covers. Like people are finding like original Throne of Glass covers. And they're like, look at this. And it's like this big find because now those sorts of prints are rare, and when they're posted, they're like $100, and then people are finding them for dirt cheap at thrift stores. So I think it's a really good source for that.
Yeah,
But my issue is that, like, I'm still particular about it. Like, if it's really, really well read, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I would take it.
Yeah, I think it depends on the book and the purpose of buying it. Like, if it's a book that I want to read, but I, like, don't know if I for sure will like it, sometimes I will buy, like, the shitty cover. And then if I do end up liking it, I'll probably buy a new copy, which is, like, almost defeats the purpose. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, most of the time, if it's more of a library stocking or something like that, I'll only buy it if it's in, like, decent condition. Like, obviously, there's going to be some spine work.
Yeah.
But I find, too, really good ones for that are, like, when libraries end up giving up their books. Like,
yeah.
You can usually find really cool covers and really different things at those sales. So, that's always fun.
Yeah. The thing, too, though, I find is really good about book sales and stuff is, like, if you didn't already know, I am a teacher. And I do teach English, so, like, a big thing for English teachers is having a stock of books in the classroom that kids can grab and read if they want. Do I ever have kids take me up on that? Not so far. But I do have a stock of books in my classroom. And sometimes I will have parents donate. Like, at the beginning of this year, I did have a parent donate the full Harry Potter set for my for my classroom library. So that was very nice. So, you know, like, going to the cheap book sales is a great way to stock up the classroom library so that you've got stuff for lots of different types of readers.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
So, but yeah, I guess we both really like secondhand books.
And I love the fun of, like, going in and looking at all the books.
Yeah, and digging around, and we make fun of some of the titles.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, some of the authors' names, when their names are dick.
Yeah.
Because we, too, are children. Can't get past that.
And, like...
So, yeah.
We love the Harlequins books. Love them. But sometimes the titles... And the covers. They're so funny.
Yeah. Like, it's obvious we love romance books.
Yeah.
But we can still laugh at the covers and the names of the books.
Yeah. Like when Fabio's on the cover.
And sometimes it's fun to buy those books when they're cheap.
Yes.
Because you're like, I would never spend full price on this cover because of this cover.
Yeah.
But I'm sure this book is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy. Mildly.
Maybe not. Okay, so it's our last week with Queen of Shadow. I'm so sad.
Me too.
Again.
It's such a good book.
It is such a good book. It's my favorite book in the series. I love it so much. I love getting mad at Kale. It's funny, I actually saw somebody in one of my Facebook book groups said the other day, so they're like, I just finished Throne of Glass, I'm reading Crown of Midnight, I love Kale, I've heard some people don't like him, and I don't know what he does to, like, I can't imagine him doing something to make him so disliked, and I don't know what to do about it, because I love him so much, and I'm just like, girl, wait for it.
Good luck.
Because he's a
tool. And, to be fair, we never liked him.
The first time I read the series, I think, I'm trying to remember if there were 3 books out or 4 books out. But I do remember liking him better than Dorian in Throne of Glass. And I remember, like, for her.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the first time I read it was literally, like, a bajillion years ago on a plane.
Yeah. Because I was like, read this book!
Yeah. You said immediately in all caps. So I don't really, I guess I can't really remember if I think I liked him more too, but it's kind of the same as ACOTAR. When you don't really have a good choice, you're gonna pick whatever.
Yeah. Yes, but so I remember, like, I very distinctly remember at the end of Crown of Midnight, like, I didn't see the problematic things at the time.
Yeah.
It's the same way with ACOTAR, and I will admit, I was one of those people at the beginning of ACOTAR, I did not, like, when I first read ACOTAR, I was on the Tamlin train. Like, yeah. I didn't see the problematic bits until reading Akamath and being like, oh shit, and then going back and reading it again and being like, oh yeah, like, this guy's skeezy, right? Like, so I will 100% admit I was duped.
Yeah.
So, same thing. I was duped in Crown of Midnight and Throne of Glass. I was like, oh, Kel. I was here for it. And then at the end, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my god, how is she going to repair this? That's what I was thinking. I'm like, how is she going to fix this? Because I was so used to the triangle, right?
Yeah.
And we had Aelin, there was Dorian, there was Chaol. I was like, well, that's the triangle. Yeah. And then on top of that, I was so used to trilogies, like books that were in threes. I was like, well, there's only going to be one more. And so I was like, how on earth is she going to repair this relationship? Because he is it for her. And she was, the character was saying it in her head, like, this is my person.
He was talking about marriage.
Yeah. So I was like, well, obviously their end game. But then after everything happened, I was like, well, shit, how is she going to fix this relationship? I didn't see a way out of that significant breach of trust. So,
which is fair.
Yeah.
Because there was none.
Well, anyway, this is one of the reasons why I like SJM so much as an author, because she doesn't do what you think she's going to do. And, like, maybe it's a little bit more common now to sort of go outside of that traditional, like, love triangle sort of a thing and, like, 3-book series sort of a thing, you know, but she was writing these books in, like, late 2000s, 2010s, I think, right? Like,
yeah. So
it was when the trilogy was such a significant, like, book trope, and the triangle was such a significant trope. Like, everybody was doing triangles, right?
Yeah.
Everybody was doing, like, sort of a modern fairy tale sort of, like, fantasy sort of a thing. And so the fact that she just, like, completely turned all of that around and did something unexpected is one of the reasons why I appreciate her so much as a writer. Yeah, I agree. And I think we've talked about it before too. Like, she was one of the first, like, strong female character people that, like, I had ever read. So that really, like, hooked me into female authors. Like, she was probably not the, I don't know, we'd read the Bitten series, and that obviously has strong female characters and a, like, good female writer and stuff. Yeah.
But, like, for fantasy books, and I know that is a fantasy books, but, like, it feels different. That's more romantasy, and this book was more, like, Throne of Glass started more as fantasy.
Yeah, and, like,
than romantasy, I think.
And, like, I'm not discrediting either that, like, you know, Hunger Games came out, Suzanne Collins, like, you know, Katniss, she was a strong female character, but it centered so much more on her relationship to other men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, like, them working together to get out of a problem. And, like, same thing with the Divergent series with Triss. Like, yeah, she was the main character, but it felt like she had to be rescued every once in a while. Or, like, she was making bad decisions, and, like, other people had to fix that for her. So, like, this sort of felt like the first true, not that she never makes mistakes and needs to be rescued, Aelin, she makes, like, but I feel like it's really only once.
Yeah, and it's like, what else was she gonna do?
So, like, I feel like this SJM is one of the first writers that I really connected with in creating a character that doesn't need a man, doesn't need to be rescued, can orchestrate the whole thing and do everything on her own, and is also dealing with this, like, insane amount of trauma every step of her life.
Yeah. And I think the trauma part was really new, too. Mm-hmm. Like, the way it's dealt with.
Yeah, like a broken character, and it's not just, oh, I'm in love, happily ever after, my life is perfect now. Like, no, that's not real life.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Sorry, we got off on a tangent there. However.
Happens. I do feel like, though, I don't know if it's just the newer series, but I feel like her writing now, because we've gotten so much of it, you kind of know what's gonna happen overarchingly. Like,
yeah,
nobody's gonna die.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe that's like, I don't know where we got this expectation that, like, it has to be realistic, people have to die. It's like, it's fantasy. Why does it have to be realistic? Like, why is this a thing that we want in books now? Like, I know we went into, like, for me, it probably started with the Harry Potter of, like, lots of people are going to die, because they do. But I don't know why we need that realism from books now. They're fantasy. Why is that something? Anyway, we could have a whole discussion on that, I think, of, like, people dying in books. Maybe we'll table that for
another time.
Yeah. Maybe not the next book, though, because it's probably bad form.
We'll see. So, like I said, it's our last week with Queen of Shadows. We are reading from chapter 65 to the very end. So last week, we had a rescue mission. Lysandra was arrested and was being transferred to Morath, and Aelin and crew rescue her, and then Chaol does something stupid and tries to kill Dorian because he sees that Dorian's not in there anymore.
At the one point in the book ever that Dorian is actually himself, there. Chaol's like, shit, you were right. Yeah. He's a demon.
He's a dumbass.
I just find it ironic that is the time that Chaol's like, I kind of love it. And as much as I hate it, I kind of love it.
Yeah. So then they get into a fight with Manon, and then Manon and Aelin battle it out, and Manon almost dies, and then Aelin saves her life, and it was very, like, action-packed, Indiana Jones type thing. So in the course of all this action, Rowan gets shot with an arrow in the shoulder. Aelin flips her lid. They do all manage to get back to Rifthold, and they make plans for knocking down the towers and saving and releasing magic. And then they're going to kill Dorian.
And deal with the king somehow.
Yeah. They got a lot on their to-do list.
I feel like this plan is a bit, like, everywhere. I'm like, we didn't get anything on the plan to do anything about the king. And I'm like, I don't know. It's not a great plan.
No. No, it's not. But hey, what odds? So, we start with Rowan sleeping in bed with Aelin. And he wakes... Woo! But not. And he wakes up to, like, a male scent wafting into the window. Like, in from the window. So they have the window open. And he obviously knows the scent immediately. It's Lorcan, and he's waiting for him on the roof. So, like, he... yeah. He, quote-unquote, like, sneaks out of bed And he knows that Lorcan, like, letting his scent waft into the bedroom, like, Lorcan's trying to set up a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes up there to chat, and Lorcan tells Rowan he slaughtered all the word hounds and asks what Aelin is planning. And I guess he's not happy about it, that fact that the word hounds all had his scent. And Rowan just sort of plays dumb and tells him, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything. And, like, it's safe to say that he might not be lying.
Yeah, he might not know. He definitely doesn't know everything. There's no way.
Yeah, like, Aelin is famous for keeping her cards close to her chest. So, like, him saying, I don't know, might not entirely be a lie.
Yeah.
So, Lorcan, like, sort of threatens him at that point and is like, you're all gonna die anyway. Like, this plan of yours isn't gonna work. So, like, you're all just gonna die, so just give me the word key that you have so I can destroy it. Mm-hmm. And Rowan then asks him to swear that the ring that they gave to Maeve that Lorcan now possesses gives protection against the Valg. And Lorcan does an official swear.
What's that? Like the C word? Sorry.
You know, like an official, like, proclamation sort of a thing that means that he's telling the truth. And he does, and Rowan's like, okay, and he hands over the amulet of Orinth, and he takes the ring, and after there's, like, a little bit of, like, back and forth snottiness between the two of them, Lorcan takes off, and Rowan heads back down in the bedroom. And, like, this whole time, we've sort of assumed that Rowan is doing this behind Aelin's back, like, giving the amulet of Orinth, you know, just sort of trying to protect her, even though, like, even in spite of the fact that she wouldn't want him to do that, right? That's sort of where we're being led during this whole conversation.
They had that conversation. Yeah, they had that conversation last week of when Lorcan had her, he was like, I would have given him anything to get you back. So, like, they really are trying to be like, he's doing this behind her back.
Yeah. So he heads back down into the bedroom, and Aelin is awake. So initially you're like, oh shit, things are about to go down, like they're gonna fight. But then they reveal that they actually gave Lorcan the fake amulet that Aelin had made, and it had the Valg commander's ring inside of it, the one that they were tricking Arobynn with. So it feels like there's actually something inside the amulet, like a dark presence leaking out of it. So it feels sort of similar to the actual amulet, but it isn't. Mm-hmm. So they were in on it together.
Good.
How they knew Lorcan would show up and do that is beyond me. Yeah.
Assumptions, I guess.
Yeah. So the next day, Chaol comes over to chat and go over the plan, and Aelin and him talk. Like, they have a genuine conversation where nobody is throwing insults at the other person.
How?
Anyway, he apologizes for everything, aka trying to kill Dorian yesterday and putting everybody's lives at risk.
Yep.
And she assures him that he is still the same person that he was before he broke his oaths. Because I guess that means something to him. The fact that he broke his promises. He promised his dad he would go back and help rule wherever. And, like...
Yeah, it's a really big deal to him that he broke that promise. But, like, I kind of feel like this in and of itself is an insult. Like, you're still the same person. We've all grown so much, but you're still the same guy that would have ran away and married me when I was an assassin. Like, you haven't changed or grown.
Yeah. He's so, like, preoccupied with the idea that him breaking his promises has made him a terrible person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, dude, your, like, bigoted attitude towards people with magic is what makes you a terrible person.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, he's not focusing on the right things. But, like, I do also appreciate that he grew up and it was, like, his honor and his whatever. He's the captain of the guard. That's all that mattered. And you're like, meh.
She also, I will say, apologizes for mauling his face. And she does tell him that what they had, like, meant something to her. And, like, I do think it was important for her to have that relationship because it allowed her to sort of heal from Sam. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it sort of led to that healing moment of, I can have a romantic relationship after losing someone.
Yeah.
She also then says, sort of like, I'm really sorry we didn't have this conversation before. Like, if you thought that me coming back sort of meant that we could get back to what we were, she was like, I can't.
Yeah.
And
I don't think he thought that, because if he did, he was delusional, because he hates her. He hates her for being Fae.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that, like, I don't know. I feel like they just needed to say it out loud.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so she just says, like, you know, obviously we can't go back, but, like, she tells him, like, you deserve to be happy. And sort of puts maybe, like, maybe Nesrin maybe you could be happy with her. So, like, it's sort of like their breakup conversation that they never got to have. Because he
shipped her off.
Well, I mean, she was too hurt and too, like, you know, but I think, like, clawing up someone's face is sort of a signal that you're not together anymore, but, like,
you'll always be my enemy.
Yeah. Anyway, so Aelin then tells Chaol that, like, she'll make the blow to Dorian quick and painless, but if he wants to take that, then it's his. And he is sort of, like, shocked that, like, she's allowing him to, like, come along at all. And I'm like, true story, man, because you go off, like, and do your own thing all the time. You don't listen, and you put everyone's lives at risk. You should stay home. Anyway. So, later on, Chaol and Nesrin are sort of discussing whether the rebels will be ready tomorrow. I guess they all have a part to play in the mission. But there's only 20 of them left in the city. They've all been, like, leaving by the boatload, I guess. But Chaol's also, like, stressed out because he can't get in touch with Ress or Brullo for some reason. Yeah, I wonder why. So they go for a walk and, like, they visit this small temple where Nesrin, like, drops a coin in the donation box and they sit in this temple. I guess it's her being, like, somewhat having a moment of like, prayer, maybe. And they talk about, like, even though her father is from the southern continent, the city is called the city of Milas Aegea. And that's the largest city and home to the Terrassen, which is the best mortal healers in the world. It was actually her mother that wanted to move there, but her father kept saying, no, we're going to stay in Rifthold. And which is, like, crazy, because Rifthold is this crazy bigoted, like, town that's really dangerous, but that's where he wants to live. And
like, racist against them for their race and, like, just hate all magical people. So it's like, I don't know. Nesrin doesn't have magic, does she?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah.
But, so, her father never ever wanted to go back there. And she hasn't actually been there since they buried their mother there. And they sort of have this, like, moment together because he thinks about what Aelin said, that he deserves to be happy. So, like, he holds her hand sort of sort of like insinuating and putting it out there that maybe they could have a romantic relationship. And she asks him to promise that he'll walk out of the castle tomorrow. And he says he promises. So the insinuation is there that he needs to walk out alive so that they can become something.
Mm-hmm.
So, move on to Rowan's point of view. He's in Aelin's room. They go over the plan for tomorrow. And he's thinking about the plan so that we get some of the plan. So the plan is for him and Aedion to take the urns of hellfire that they got last week through the sewers, through the entrance the word hounds used to the clock tower, and they would blow it up while Aelin and Chaol sort of distract everybody by just walking in the front door. And he's like, obviously Aelin and Chaol have the hard job.
Well, I think they're both hard jobs.
Well, yes, they become hard jobs, but, you know,
yeah.
Rowan is like, my job's easy. I just have to bring the hellfire in, put it at the base of the clock tower, and leave. Right?
Yeah.
So Aelin comes out then in a gold metallic nightgown. And that's the color that Rowan said at the beginning when she started wearing the little nightgowns. That's the color that he said he would really want to see. So she had it on. And, like, he is literally on fire. He wants her really bad. Says he hasn't been able to get her out of his system. She asks him for a kiss because she wants to do it just once, which makes him think that she expects them all to die tomorrow, or at least her. And he says that they'll survive, and no matter what happens, he'll be by her side, no matter whatever. Like, even if they die, he says that he'll be by her side. And they kiss, but it's described as being, like, soft and gentle, like the bare whisper of a kiss. But he describes it as an answer to a question he's asked for centuries.
Interesting. What does that mean?
Who knows? But, like, anybody who had questions, the answer is right here.
It's right in front of all of us.
Mm-hmm. We're being purposefully cryptic because we don't want to spoil the next book if you haven't read it, but anyway, he wants more, obviously, because again, he is like on fire, but essentially she tells him he needs to survive tomorrow to get the rest. So, like, she's essentially bribing him with future sex. Yeah. Survive tomorrow so we can have sex.
Basically.
And this is a quotable moment that's like a very common quote for the series now. Is she tells him that he makes her want to live, not survive, not exist, but live, which is like it's become one of the big quotes for the for the series, and it's cute. I like it.
I do too.
But like that sort of moment for him hit him like a ton of bricks. So they just get in bed and, like, he holds her all night long. Like, it's meaningful for him because I guess she's just been existing for so long, right? She hasn't really lived. She hasn't had that joy of life, and he's overwhelmed with the idea that he makes her want that. So the next morning, Aelin was out. She goes out to get breakfast for everyone. Yesterday, she actually ordered Lysandra and Evangeline to go to Nesta's father's country home today.
Just send everyone there.
Just send everyone there, yep. But says, like, you have done enough, and you need to get yourself and Evangeline to safety. And,
which
like,
I love.
I also love, and I think it's valid. Like, she was literally kidnapped the other day and arrested. She killed Arabin. Like, she's done a shit ton.
Yeah.
So, yes, your role is over. Go relax. So she goes and buys some pastries, and she almost forgets to pay the vendor. And he's like, hey. And she's like, what? And he's like, money. And she's like, oh, sorry. And he's like, it's okay. Everybody is jumpy after what happened. And she's like, what do you mean? What happened?
Oh, shit, not something else.
Yeah. And he directs her to a wall that enters the market. Like, I guess the markets all have, like, walls around them to, like, signify you coming in. I don't know. Apparently, there's a message written in something darker than blood at the entrance to every major market in town. So, something darker than blood. I'm going out on a limb and saying it's Valg blood, because what's darker than real blood?
And same consistency.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the message actually says, witch killer, the human is still inside him, which changes Aelin's whole plan. So obviously it's referring to Dorian. So they all thought that Dorian was gone and it was only the demon left. But now knowing that Dorian is still there, it means that, well, obviously we can't kill him now. They want to be able to...
There's a possibility of saving him.
Yeah, so it changes her whole plan. So we skip to plan is in action. Her and Chaol sort of help with carrying the vats of hellfire, like, to a certain point. And Rowan wishes Chaol luck, and then looks to Aelin, and she sort of notices that he's got a corner of his cloak torn off. And, like, it looks like it's just been snagged on an obstacle and, like, ripped off or something. And for some reason, she focuses on that. I'm assuming because she doesn't want to focus on the fact that she's leaving him and, like, maybe doesn't know if she'll see him again.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. But they hug, and Aedion gives Aelin her father's sword to use, so gives her the Sword of Orinth. Is that what it's called? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it has another name, but...
Yes, the Sword of Orinth. Even though she's got 2 other swords, where are the other 2?
Yeah.
And, like, just in my mind, bringing the Sword of Orinth in to the castle outright, like, doesn't that make a statement that maybe you don't want to make if your goal is to distract?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway.
I feel like it's for the statement that she's bringing it in there, but you're also like, wasn't this not the plan? I don't know the plan.
We don't know the plan. But
that's the real thing.
We'll discuss it in a second.
Yeah.
So then they make a vow to light up the darkness, and she tells the 3 of them, let's go rattle the stars. Another quotable moment.
This book has all the quotable moments.
It does have all the quotable. Yeah, for sure. So then we go to Lysandra's POV. They're in a carriage heading out of the city, but it's really slow going since, like, it's the solstice, so it's a holiday, so, like, there's people everywhere, and they're supposed to be like this. There's supposed to be, like, this festival sort of thing going on. And she feels guilty leaving Aelin and everyone behind, but she's doing it to keep Evangeline safe. So she considers Evangeline, like, her number 1 priority. Valid. She's a small child.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we are at Aedion's point of view. They're in the sewers carrying the urns. Aelin has instructed them to paint word marks all over their bodies in their own blood as they sneak into the castle catacombs. So they have some level of protection. Chaol's point of view. So, like, we're rapid fire going through everybody. Yeah. The plan involves him chained up and Aelin leading him with a dagger at his side as if she captured him. And this is what I mean. If the goal is to have her pretend to be the king's champion, Selena Sardathian, and bring him in as if she captured him, wouldn't having the Sword of Orinth be a dead giveaway that, hey, I rescued Aedion?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I understand it's a distraction and, like, they don't know how long they'll, like, how long they'll be able to distract everyone for, but to me, this is like a key way to have everyone clue in immediately.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Right.
Just saying. So, they approach the castle gate, and they see all 16 of Chaol's men strung up, having been picked at by the crows. So that's why they couldn't get in touch with them, because they were tortured. And Chaol knows that this is a message for him, not for Aelin. Unlike when he's when they burned the market, the shadow market, and like all this stuff, he's like, that's for you, because you're the worst. But he knows like, that's not on her, this is on him. And this is sort of our hint that earlier in the book, when Dorian was in the dungeon torturing, and someone was trying to plead and say, Dorian, please, this was these guys.
Yeah, just sad.
It's very sad. But, again, what did they expect, having these specific 16 people wearing flowers when...
I know, it's obvious.
Mm-hmm. They should have had something more subtle.
Yeah.
So he tells Aelin that they need to change the plan, although they don't tell us what they're changing it to.
Yeah. My thing here is like, I kind of get what they're changing it to based on later, but I'm like, I don't understand what their plan was originally.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
I find his participation in this whole thing sort of stupid, to be honest, and I'll explain why.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, Aelin approaches the guard at the gate and tells him that the king's champion has returned with one hell of a prize. So she walks Chaol with 10 armed guards through the castle. That was like super empty. Like half the court seems to have left. So it's very sparse. So they approach the council room and see the king sitting on his throne, and Dorian is standing there beside him. A very small aside of Dorian's point of view for like not even half a page of like the faces of the two that come in tugged at his memory, and he recognized the woman, but then corrects himself that he doesn't know her, and he doesn't know the other face either, and he doesn't care. But a part of me is like, is Dorian must be specifically forgetting, like purposefully not bringing it up so the demon doesn't have this information, if I'm correct.
Yeah. I that's what I assume.
So then we go back to Aelin. So she plays it as though she is still Selena Sardothian to the king. Says like, sort of pretends like she has been in Wendlin on the other continent this whole time. And she's like, what's been happening here since I've been gone? And she brought, I'm assuming fake, rings to the prince and king of Wendlin. Like, that was who she was sent away to kill. So she brings those back sort of as like, look, I did it. And says like, sorry I couldn't bring their heads with me, but customs is awful. So, just insinuating she obviously couldn't bring decaying heads on a 3-week journey across the sea to a different country.
Yeah.
Valid point. Anyway, he asks what she was doing when Narok was killed. And she was like, I was dealing with my original mission. Like, what else was I supposed to be doing? And then he says, well, why do you have the captain in chains? And she's like, she sort of plays it off as like, oh, he waited for me like a good boy, like a good dog down at the docks. And then she managed to like, get him to confess everything. So she brought him to the king. And I'm like, you should have come up with something better. Something more believable than that.
Well, I feel like a lot of these plans, I feel like that. I'm like, I guess it is just it's just a distraction until...
I guess.
I'm still like, why didn't they come a tiny bit later? Why didn't they? I don't know.
But, like, so, like, I guess it doesn't really matter. Because then the king drops, like, a bomb and says, he asks her, like, I don't know who's been conspiring more. The captain here or you? Or should I call you Aelin? Like, so he obviously knows who she is. So I guess the point is, it doesn't really matter that this sort of reason on how she captured how she captured Chaol, it doesn't really matter that it was flimsy, because he's like, well, I already know, and I know that you're bullshitting me, so, like, let's not waste time. But I just wanted the story to be more believable.
Yeah.
Because, like, if someone came to me and said he was waiting for me and I got him to confess everything just off at the drop of a hat, I'd be like, I don't think so.
And, like, it's a quick turn on where we saw their relationship before, so it is weird anyway. But yeah, I don't get why they had to make it so convoluted. I guess, like, they wanted to get in there, but, like, I don't think it would have been that hard.
I mean, I think the plan was solid. Like, the idea of her bringing a captured Chaol to the king. I think that's valid. Mm-hmm. I just wish that her being like, I caught him. I wish that had been different.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway. So we skip to Rowan now. They're nearing the clock tower, and as they get close to it, the word stone gives them, like, pounding headaches and nosebleeds. And Aelin had warned them that it would affect them as, like, because she was affected when she got close to it back in Crown of Midnight. But she was in a human body, and they're both more, I'm not going to say more fae, but sort of, they're both more fae. So they were like, it affected them so much worse.
Yeah.
So they set up the hellfire, or the urns, and they have to set a fuse wire in the hellfire so that they can be far away to light it so that they don't blow up. So they start unspooling the wire down the tunnel to get as far away as possible, and they start down the tunnel, and Rowan feels something drip onto his shoulder, and he looks up, and there are 7 word hounds clinging to the ceiling, and one of them is holding a corner of a piece of fabric in its mouth. And Rowan recognizes it as the missing corner of his cloak that Aelin mentioned earlier, and obviously Lorcan had lied. He didn't kill the word hounds. He instead gave them Rowan's scent the same way that Aelin did to him. So Lorcan has created a setup, and it's a dangerous one. So Aelin's point of view again. So we're gonna flip-flap.
I love it.
We're gonna flip-flop back and forth between a lot of POVs right now because, like, they want to, I guess we're trying to, like, draw out this moment and make it sort of not answer everything all at once.
Yeah.
So, we're in Aelin's point of view, and the king sort of admits that he peered inside Dorian's mind the day Aedion was freed and saw Aelin rescue him, and I guess noticed the similarities and connected the dots. So again, her giving up that minute for Dorian was what gave her away.
Yeah.
And Chaol was complaining about it. So, again,
piece of shit.
Yep. Anyway, so they banter a bit about how she's a traitor and Chaol's a traitor who, like, obviously isn't really chained. So he's like, just get out of those chains. I know you're not actually chained up. So he's like, okay. And, like, just drops the chains. And he admits that he doesn't know how he didn't see the connection until now. And I'm like, I also don't know how he didn't see the connection until now. Like, I can't
100%.
Like, can't believe he literally got through 2 books without knowing who she is. That's wild.
Yeah.
And he also says that when she was a child, he saw how she wished to be ordinary, and he gave her that wish. And she's like, dude, you killed my family. And he's like, you didn't want to rule anyway. So, like, I did you a favor.
Thanks? Like, what does he expect for that?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for hunting me down and making me, like, almost pass out and die in a river.
Yeah.
So.
Good man.
Yeah. Yeah. So they banter a little bit more, and then he asks if she wants to see the power of the word keys. And then he forces Dorian to kneel and, like, whips him over and over again with dark power. And he's screaming, and Chaol and Aelin are trying to get to him, but the word marks on their own body is actually making a barrier so that they can't get to him. And when the king is done, he forces Dorian up, and the demon inside acts as though, like, nothing happened. So I don't know if they let Dorian, like, in the forefront in that minute. Like, if
would make sense.
If the demon retreated and then came back. Mm-hmm. And Chaol asks the king to free Dorian, that he'll give him anything in return. And I'm like, dude, you dumbass. You don't, like, this guy is a raving lunatic.
Yeah.
But obviously, the only thing the king wants is Aelin.
Yeah.
And she tells him, like, you killed my family, so it's only fair that I destroy you. And she pulls out the eye of Elena that's around her neck, just as the clock tower strikes 12. And I don't understand that's part of the plan. Like, maybe I just don't remember all the shit about the eye of Elena, besides the fact that I know that it glows in the presence of danger or evil for her, like, in the presence of the Valg. But
it's what captured Erewhon in the first place, was the Eye of Elena. So, I don't know if they being Aelin, etc., are under the assumption that Erewhon has not been raised yet, and they need this eye to do it. So, like, maybe the king wants the eye to be able to raise him. Or, it's the only thing that could contain Erewhon, kind of thing.
I guess. And, like, I understand that it's a key, but I don't understand it's like, I'm gonna destroy you, and then pulls out this necklace as if, like, it's got the power to destroy him. Like, it's like she is intending for him to be like, oh my god, no, not that amulet. Like, as if it's got the power to, like, do something to him. But it doesn't. It's just a key. Like, it's just something he wants. So I don't understand why the reveal is important in this moment.
But it can contain Erewhon, so it can probably contain whatever
he
is inside the king. Do we not know there's something inside the king yet?
I don't know.
Like, obviously we figured out this week, but, like, you'd think that she would actually use it to take what the prince inside of Dorian and lock him up.
But, like, does she even know how to use it?
No.
So
I don't think so.
I feel like this reveal is weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's weird. So she thinks to herself that, oh, the eye isn't just a ward against evil, but a key to unlock Erewhon's tomb, which you just said. And the king tells her, like, she's made a huge mistake. And she's like, yes, you're right. Because the clock tower was actually supposed to blow up at 12, and it hasn't. So she's like, yep, you are correct. So back to Rowan's point of view really quick. He's battling the word hounds with Aedion. Aedion dropped the spool of wire somewhere, and they're also being herded away from it. So, like, obviously they can't help it, but, like, dummies. They're being herded away from the spool of wire, and now they can't blow it up, and now Aelin is in trouble. And Rowan is, like, so frustrated because he hears the last chime signaling that, like, noon is over. That was his cue to blow it up, and he bellows in anger because he knows that Aelin is, like, counting on him. And that only makes the word hounds more angry, and they all attack, and I guess they manage to get past Aedion's defenses and make him bleed. And then we go back to Kael's point of view this time. So Aelin is, like, taunting the king with the Eye of Elena and, like, mentioning about, oh, poor Erewhon, like, locked in his tomb. And she's, like, backing towards the doors and telling the king to let Dorian go or she's gonna destroy the key. So I guess this was, you know, just revealing that she has the key and she's gonna destroy it. And the king instead sends Dorian after Aelin to retrieve her and the key. So she runs through the doors and down the hall. Like, where are all the guards that escorted them there in the first place? They just standing by watching?
I guess so.
Can they not help? Like, it's one of those things where, like, dude, you're dumb. Send the guards, too. Like, she can't... Yeah. I don't want her to fail, but, like, you know, if you're being a good bad guy, send all of your resources after the person you want. She can't fight against... They said there was 10 guards there. She can't fight against 10 guards plus Dorian.
Yeah. Maybe they're not fast enough.
God. But, like, how does he know that?
I don't know.
Like, why let her even leave the room? Why were they not guarding the door? Anyway, so she's gone. And Kael holds up his sword to the king so that the king can't go as well. So, Aelin's POV now. So she's running down the hall and Dorian's chasing her. And the demon is actually using Kael's hoarfrost to chase her. So, like, he's, like, freezing everything as he goes. And, like, the ice is, like, catching up to her. And she knew that if, like, the frost touches her, it's going to freeze her in place and she'll be stuck. So she has to get ahead of it and stay ahead of it. So the ice is, like, she finds, like, a set of stairs and she's, like, climbing and climbing and climbing until she reaches this, like, glass walkway. So I think we've mentioned before, like, in previous episodes that we've, you know, in, like, the first couple of episodes, in the first couple of books, we've described the castle and how there's the original castle, but how there's a glass sort of addition. So this is one of those glass additions, and it's literally like a walkway entirely made of glass and entirely see-through. So, like, pretty darn cool, actually.
Yeah, it sounds super cool.
Yeah. And, like, so she finds this walkway, and the ice is getting closer and closer, and she slips on it, and the cold actually explodes the glass so that shards, like, slice into her back, and she just, like, jumps through the window to get away, and runs across, like, a parapet, and, like, Dorian is chasing her. So, like, she is obviously trying to get somewhere on purpose, right? Okay, so Kael's point of view. So he thought of how Aelin had actually planned to take both the king and Dorian on herself, but he wanted to help. And
so that was the original plan.
Yes.
But, like, how was she going to do that? Why was he even there if that was the plan? I have so many questions.
I don't know. Like, I feel like this is just her taking on too much because it's what she does.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like, you know, you're kind of right. Like, she wouldn't have been able to do that. Maybe that was her plan, but it would not have been feasible. Mm-hmm. But in the same breath, right now, he's, like, facing off against the king, thinks about how the Eye of Elena is not actually the real one. It was all a trick. So, like, she has so many copies of different jewelry. She's got more than one Amulet of Ornth. She's got more than one Valg ring. She's got the Wendelin rings that are fake. She's got the Eye of Elena that's fake. It's like, holy moly, she has really... Whoever her jeweler is has made a lot of money.
Working overtime.
Yeah. Anyway, so everything was a trick. Like, the Eye of Elena she's wearing, it's obviously not the real one. It's a trick. Mm-hmm. And all he has to do now is buy Aelin time. And, like, the king approaches him slowly and starts, like, shooting dark power at him, which obviously is flaking off his word marks slowly. And I'm just like, why doesn't he attack back? He just stands there with his sword and just waits. He doesn't do anything.
He probably doesn't know how. Sorry, that's not true. I know it's not true, but I don't understand anything about him, so that's where I am.
Like, I'm not saying he could take the king. You know what I mean?
No, but
like,
he should distract him with sword fighting so he's not being hit with magic continuously.
Yes!
Yeah. Completely agree.
Anyway, Dorian's point of view. He wants to kill the woman.
Hey.
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about how Dorian is Elsa in these scenes? Because I love it.
Let it go, let it go. Yeah, he's very Elsa, you're right.
Yeah.
So he wants to kill that woman. Is that him or is that the demon? It must be the demon. And
we were in his head and he wanted that woman to kill him, so.
Yes, yeah. So she says his name, but he doesn't know it. And he wants to kill her. And that's it. That's all we get from his point of view.
Fair enough.
And Aelin, we go to Aelin's point of view now. So she's trying to reason with Dorian. And they're like literally out on the roof of the castle, like having this conversation. And she's like trying to reason with him and get him to come out. And she talks about Kael and Sorsha and, like, tries to reason with him. But obviously the demon doesn't care. He actually makes a dagger of ice and stabs it into her side.
Nice.
Which is fun. Back to Rowan. So they are slowing down. I guess not having magic is really bad for them.
Yeah, they're, like, super powerful when they have magic. But when they don't, they're like, oh my god. We're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. So 4 of the word hounds are dead, which is great for them. But 3 are still alive. So 2 are coming for him and 1 for Aedion. 1 chomps down on Rowan's leg and shatters it. And the other is about to attack when something slams into it. It's Lorcan!
Yay!
Not so terrible after all. So with Lorcan's help, they managed to kill the remaining 3 wordhounds, like, quite quickly. I guess because he's fresh.
He's fresh.
So,
yeah.
They are getting the wire, and they're about to blow up the tower when Rowan feels, like, a phantom pain in his side, and realizes it's Aelin. But, like, is this not the Blood Oath bond, or the the Blood Oath bond, right?
Well, we don't really know anything about these bonds, so, yeah.
Side note. Well, so they're some sort of one part of their bond, or like the Blood Oath, or the Caranam, or something, like, he feels her pain, or something like that. So, Lorcan shoves Rowan up and, like, tells him to move and to run. And Aedion lights the fuse, they all run, and the hellfire blows up the tower, and the sewers shake and partly collapses, and it actually blocks their way into the castle. And it also reveals 100 Valg soldiers armed and waiting for them.
Great.
So, yeah. So not only did they have to deal with 7 wordhounds that, like, completely wiped them out, but now they've got 100 Valg soldiers that they have to fight. And then we go to Manon's point of view really quickly. They're riding home after she wrote the messages in Valg blood, and she feels a breeze and shudder, and she knows magic has been freed, and she feels her strength and immortality return. So
I love it.
Yay. And, like, way to go. So, would you consider this moment of Manon, like, sharing that bit of information? Because she said she owed a life debt to Aelin because she saved her life. Would you consider this, like, a payment for that, or?
I feel like Manon pays it back 3 times in small ways. The first, when she doesn't tell the king that she didn't kill them and that they were there. Yeah. And this. And then I think later on, there's mention of it again. And I think that's like the third wrap-up of it.
Favor. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so then we go to Kaltain's point of view. Although it doesn't tell us that it's Kaltain, we just get it from, like, what they say. Yeah, context. So apparently the keep is in chaos, and, like, everybody is freaking out that magic is back, and, like, she can feel it. And it says she can feel the loosing of a beast inside who, like, purrs at her shadow fire. So shit's about to go down.
Love it.
Then we go to Aelin's point of view again. So she's crying at Dorian, like begging him to come back, and that they can come back from the loss. And he's about to like play, quote unquote, with her with his dagger. So like she's like on the ground, like bleeding, and like he's about to torture her with daggers. And they feel a breeze and a boom, and they can feel the magic. And then the ring on Dorian's finger starts to glow. So Aelin had actually shoved that ring that they got from Lorcan, shoved it on his finger when he was busy stabbing her, and didn't notice that she shoved a ring on him. And the demon is like shrieking to take it off, but she had picked this exact spot because the sun would hit the glass and refract, and it hit her and filled her up with light, and she throws her magic at Dorian with all she has. And I'm just like, how? I didn't realize that sun gave her a boost.
I guess.
Anyway.
It's a goddess favor.
Yeah, it's just like so holy shit she had thought of all of this.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, like, it made it seem like he was chasing her and she was just trying to, like, go any way to escape. And, like, she acts that way so the person that is chasing her doesn't realize that she's leading them into a trap. But she is. Anyway, so we get Dorian's point of view. So apparently he sees the woman and sees that she's healed with magic, and he remembers what she has said to like fight it and to remember. And her flames keep the demon at bay and burn the demon, but not him. And he pushes and pushes and finally sees through his own eyes Selena Sardathian. And I'm like, does he not know that she's Aelin?
He does, yeah. But
so why is, I guess, she's more Selena to him than Aelin. So, Aedion's point of view now. They're fighting Valg, but they just keep coming and coming. Rowan can barely stand and is almost out of magic. Lorcan is low on magic and trying to cut a line through the soldiers. And Aedion sort of knows they're not making it out alive, but at least they gave their queen a chance. And a commander approaches Aedion, ready to strike, and Aedion knows this is probably his last breath, when all of a sudden a ghost leopard comes and rips the guy's head clean off. Bum bum bum!
Amazing.
So, yep. Lysandra's point of view, she obviously could not leave them behind, so she sent Evangeline to the country house without her, and when magic was freed, she transformed and tracked her friends here and gave herself over to the beast and essentially destroyed all the soldiers left. Which is crazy. Like, think about how many soldiers there are.
Yeah.
Like, there were so many.
It's wild.
And she just goes after all of them. I don't understand how. But also, one thing I don't understand, and we're going back to this magic, like, that we don't understand the shapeshifter magic very much, but she had no idea what a ghost leopard was until they explained it to her.
Mm-hmm.
So then how did she know to transfer into one if she'd never seen one before? Because I thought she said earlier that in order for her to transform into something, she has to know what it looks like. Because otherwise,
they just gave a good enough description. That's the implication. I'm telling you.
I don't agree with this.
I listen. She's an auditory learner.
Okay. So, when all the soldiers are dead, Rowan begs her to go to the queen. So off she goes again. She essentially saves the day.
Mm-hmm.
And she is running at the gate to get into the castle because they can't get in through the tunnels because everything is blocked after the Mababi. The blow-up thing. Yes, that's the word.
The Mababi.
Yes, the Mababi. So she is, like, running at the gate, and the gate is guarded by 30 soldiers, and she's about to, like, be like, oh, shit, I gotta do all this again. And all of a sudden, arrows start to fire. And the soldiers are, like, shooting arrows at her so that she can't even make it to them to, like, bite all their heads off.
Yeah.
And she is avoiding them, but then all of a sudden one comes at her, and she knows it's gonna hit her. But then that arrow is knocked away by another arrow. And Nesrin and the rebels are on a nearby rooftop, and they're firing arrows, killing all the guards, and letting Lysandra through the gates towards the queen.
Like, I guess this is what the rebels' job was?
Yeah. I mean, valid job. It was important.
Lysandra would never... She would have died if Nesrin wasn't there, so...
Yeah. Now, do I think Nesrin could have did all that by herself? Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Do I think they actually could have done that before Lysandra even gets there? Probably. Yeah. They didn't have to wait until she showed up, but it wouldn't be as, like...
dramatic.
Yeah. So, Aelin's point of view. Her head is hurting. She used too much magic too fast, and the demon is still in control. And she just didn't have time to tunnel down. So she's, like, pouring all of her magic at Dorian to try and burn the demon. But it hasn't worked yet. Mm-hmm. So she hears a sound behind her, and it's the King of Adarlan. So he has showed up. Hey. He taunts Aelin about Chaol. And how, obviously, Chaol tried to buy her time, but not really, because he just stood there and didn't attack. So Aelin asks if he killed Chaol, and he says that he was pathetic, and that he didn't even land one blow.
Which is what you just said.
Yep. And the king also says his only regret is that he didn't get to take his time. And Aelin is about to fight him when Dorian speaks up and asks the king, "What did you say? What did you say about Chaol? Did you kill Chaol?" And the king asks, like, so what if he did? And the light that's coming from the ring burns and burns and burns, but the collar stays in place. And the king is pissed that Aelin put the ring on his son and flings a spear of darkness at her, but it shatters against a wall of ice. So then we go to Dorian's point of view. He remembers his name and who Aelin is, and that she came back for him. And the demon inside him is screaming and pleading at him, trying to bargain to, like, take the ring off. But he's so pissed, he just grabs the collar and rips it off of his neck. Very good, Dorian. Very good.
Good job. Big fan.
And, yeah. And Aelin rushes over to him because obviously that took a ton of, like, energy from him. So the king then shoots more dark power, and she uses her fire to hold him off. They're, like, both in bad shape, but they hold hands and they join their magic. So, like, are they also Karanem?
I think he can take magic from anyone, because he's just got whatever the fuck it's called. Like, you don't need to be compatible with him because he has raw magic. So I feel like he could probably give everybody magic too.
Fun.
But nobody really says that ever. So, you know, we'll just make assumptions.
Yeah. So the king becomes darkness itself, and he's enraged, and he strikes them, and he tries to swallow them in darkness, but they hold tight, And the way they describe it is it's like they're the beginning, the middle, and the end. And, like, they mention, like, being, like, newborn gods and being crafted from light and stardust. And it's very, like, ethereal and, like, there's this... It's like, where did all this power come from?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, they're both nearly done, and then all of a sudden they combine. So, like, there's something to this match.
Yeah.
And they cannot be contained, and they erupt. Then we go back to Rowan's point of view again. He used the rest of his magic to heal himself, because remember, his leg is shattered. So he heals himself as best as he can. More soldiers are coming, meaning they can't leave the way Lysandra came in, because they were too slow to leave. Like, they should have just ran when Lysandra ran.
Yeah, I guess she's so fast. So speedy.
Yeah. So they went another way until they meet another cave-in, but they're digging and digging until there's a small hole that Rowan as a hawk could squeeze through, which leaves Lorcan and Aedion just in the dust to defend themselves against the more soldiers that are coming.
Yep.
Great.
And, like, it's not even, like, they're friends or anything. Like, they don't know each other. Lorcan is, like, pissed at them all.
Yeah.
Lorcan could just, like, take Aedion and bring
Kill
him back to Maeve.
on the spot. Yeah.
Or kill him, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. He flies up to find Aelin. Like, he just leaves them and sees that she's alive.
Important.
Yeah. He sees that she's alive, but he is, like, in awe and has no words for what he's seeing. Because obviously, remember, he sees that they're, like, exploding and lighting up, being all light and stardusty and, like, new and, like, gods. Mm-hmm. So Aelin and Dorian fracture the king's power, and they wipe every spell and ounce of evil he's controlled in the castle, wipes it all away. And Aelin thought about how Dorian's power was infinite, which is wild. Like, he apparently has no bottom to his well. But, like, she's also never found the bottom of her well, right?
Yeah, it's weird, because, like, she was like, she used too much magic, she wasn't able to go down and get it. Like, does he
even have a well?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand.
But like, they said that he was spent, right? Like, he was... So, obviously, he also must have to...
Like, he wasn't able to, get enough. Yeah.
Anyway, so they're, like, full of light and fire and overflowed with it as they burn the king's power away until it's nothing. And then the king falls to his knees, and I guess they stop the power, because they've wiped it all the king's darkness away. And Dorian is, like, looking at him with hate because he enslaved him and was a dick for most of his life. Mm-hmm. But the only thing the king says is, "My boy," and asks Aelin if she has come to kill him at last.
Love it. We go over to Aelin's point of view now, and Dorian tells her not to listen to his lies. And they notice that the king's ring is shattered, and he's looking more and more human, or, like, Aelin notices this. And he tells them that everything he did was to keep Dorian safe from him.
Quote unquote.
I put in quotation marks.
Yep.
And then he kind of tells them what happened. So he found the key, I guess the one in the tomb, the word key. And he brought it to Morath, and he and Perrinton opened the crypt of Erewhon. And Erewhon took the Duke's body, and one of his minions took the king's body. He tells them then, like, she could have sealed the Erewhon back in with the Eye of Elena, and that's kind of why he was like, holy shit, when she showed him. I guess.
Yeah, so still, like, we're learning now that Erewhon has already been freed and has been free for years.
And has been the Duke, because, like, I don't know, I kind of found that was, like, a twist, that the Duke was the one leading it all along, because, like, in Throne of Glass, like, the Duke is kind of subservient to the king.
Yes, yeah.
And, like, he's fine with it, it seems like. So it's interesting that it's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
So Aelin asks how nobody noticed that Erawan was in the Duke, and the king says that Erawan can hide inside of a body like a snail in a shell, but it also stifles his ability to scent anybody else. So, like, that's why he didn't realize that she was who she is and Fae and all that.
Right.
Which is convenient.
Yes, very convenient.
She says then that, like, the king butchered her kingdom and slaughtered millions, and he says he tried to stop it, and that the Valg can, like, sense magic, and they can tell who would be the best people to kind of inhabit, I guess. So when Dorian was born, he wrestled away control for long enough to have the towers built and to banish magic, because he wanted to be able to save Dorian. And basically, now that magic is back, the Valg will be able to sniff out magic wielders and figure out whose bodies are best. Like, they don't have to go through family lineage anymore. And he says he used all of his strength to hide how magic disappeared, so he couldn't fight the demon on anything else. So that was, like, the one thing that he used his self for. And apparently the demon just thought that, like, the gods took magic away because they were pissed at everybody. So that's interesting. Dorian obviously, well, not obviously, but Dorian isn't really buying this and says that he's lying. And he tells his father that he still ended up being able to use magic and it didn't protect him. And the king says he used his blood in the spell to get rid of magic, so that must be why Dorian is immune. And he says he's sorry, and he calls Dorian his boy. And Aelin kind of says, like, he doesn't get to call him that. And she says, like, he came to her house and killed her family. But he says he came to get her to burn the demon out of her. So, like, I think in Heir of Fire, we had a memory of that supper, and, like, a worm was in her head digging in,
yes,
and she kind of, like, blew up, and then her mom had to suffocate her with water. Yeah. But he says that the king went there with the intention of her burning the Valg out of him, which is kind of crazy. And, like, obviously, the way everything could have gone differently if she was able to do it then would have been wild.
But can I also just say that, like, I understand that obviously they can't neglect, like, a lifetime of, like, they have hated this man, or she has hated this man for years and years and years. And Dorian has also, like, hasn't loved him for years and years and years. I don't know about, like, extensive hate, but hates him now anyway because of Sorsha and everything. Yeah. And, like, he's finally telling them that wasn't him. That was a demon living inside of him. And both of them are still really angry. And, like, rightfully so to be angry, but, I just feel like they're still being really dickish. Like, Aelin's not being a dick to Dorian. Like, he did a bunch of terrible shit in the name of the fact that he was inhabited by a demon, and that is immediately forgiven. And, like, I get they can't forgive him, but, like, dude, like, he's telling you that all of this was not him, and he did his best to protect Dorian, and they're just like, well, you're still awful.
But Dorian doesn't believe this, is where Dorian's coming from. But I think the other part of it, too, is, like, he's the one that opened the crypt. Like, he went down and did it. It's not like somebody else put a Valg in him. He did something dumb and had to live with the consequences.
Well, I guess, but, like, that's it. He did something dumb. I guess he didn't realize what it would do.
Yeah, but it's not even just something dumb. It's like, they were forbidden from going near the crypt. Like, no one was supposed to go there. Like, sure, they didn't know exactly what was in it, I assume, but, like, it was a forbidden place. You don't just bring a key there and
Yeah, but, like, imagine if somebody says, hey, Catherine, don't go to that abandoned castle.
I think
we're going to be like, an abandoned castle? Ooh. You know what I mean?
It's different when you're a king and your ancestors are like, this is forbidden because of, like, I assume there was some, like, reason given or something.
But again, like, if we were passed down, if someone said, now this has been passed down for hundreds and hundreds of years, don't go to the abandoned castle, I would still go to the fucking abandoned castle.
Yeah. We don't know what was said, but I have less forgiveness for him because he did it to himself, whereas Dorian, it was forced into him.
I know, and I'm not saying that I'm just saying, like, I'm surprised at how cold they're still being. Like, even having, like, a shred of, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, but Aelin does. Dorian just thinks he's lying. Like, in this whole part, Dorian's just like, don't listen to him. He's lying. Over and over again. But Aelin is kind of, like, believing him. But she kind of had to ask him, because, like, he's been in this body the whole time, and, like, he was the one that had her family killed, so what was he doing during that time that he couldn't have stopped? Yeah, so I get why she's questioning him on it, but she does kind of soften up a bit, and then it's too late anyway. So yeah, he tells her that the Valg and him, basically after that meeting, went after her family because it saw her fire and knew that it could burn it out. So,
but it's funny because didn't they do it that night?
No, because they after that they moved to their, like, country home or something, because they were at that memory. Aedion was there, and then after that they pack her up and bring her to, like, their country home or something further away. So it might be like the next night or something. So he's kind of, Aelin's looking at him, and his body is kind of decaying. Like, his life and the Valg's life were too intertwined. And she's starting to believe this now. She, like, is like, that makes sense. I get it. He also tells them he didn't actually kill Chaol. There was a light around him, and that kind of, like, stopped him from dying. And Aelin thinks that she's happy because she did try to give Chaol a chance. And you're like, what does that mean? I'm sure we'll figure it out later. Dorian calls him a liar again and says that he deserves this. And Aelin tries to stop him because they need to, like, ask the king more questions. But Dorian is too fast. And he roars, and, like, the glass castle just shatters. And the bridge explodes, and Aelin is, like, flying through the air, and she's, like, using her magic as a cocoon around herself to, like, burn the glass, because there's just glass flying everywhere. People are screaming, and Dorian is, like, basically destroying the castle, and she has to use all of her magic to make a firewall to stop the glass from, like, going into Rifthold and killing people there. So it kind of ends up looking pretty cool, I think. I don't know if there's much fan art of it or anything, but maybe I should look for it. But they end up with, like, a giant wave of glass in front of the castle. But it's just interesting because Dorian is just so pissed. He almost killed literally everybody in Rifthold. Like, he just didn't give a fuck. So yeah. She has to use all of her magic for that, and then a wind pushes her up as she's falling, and she's literally thinking to herself, like, she just needs a few more seconds to, like, create this wave, and then she can die. And she's, like, she's thinking of the city of Rifthold and how, like, the good and the bad of it for her, but how she wants it saved, which is interesting because, like, there's a lot of bad that was in it. She lands softly in the grass, and darkness slams into the back of her head. And you're like, she landed softly though, so how did darkness slam into the back of her head?
Yes.
she wakes up like a few seconds later, and only the stone castle is left, and obviously the wave is there. And Dorian is kind of near her, passed out, and Kale is like 3 feet away. So like some either magic for sure, brought them all to the same place and kept them safe. Then we get, she actually put the real Eye of Elena in Kale's pocket, and that is why there was a light around him and why he survived it all. She smells pine and snow, and she knows, like, Rowan is the one that stopped them from falling and, like, actually crashing. They landed gently.
Thank God for Rowan.
Right? Well, it's a good thing he left Aedion and Lorcan, I guess.
True. Yeah.
Even though Aedion and Lysandra are right there, so they must have got through. They must have made the hole bigger and got through, too. And obviously Lysandra was coming in a different direction. So they all kind of converge, and Aelin makes an archway through the wave and goes out to address the people. So she tells them that their king is dead, but their prince lives, and he is currently in mourning. So she is going to be in control until he's ready. And if they misbehave, she'll find them and burn them to ash. And if they try to revolt against their new king, this wall will turn to molten glass and flood their streets and homes. She also says that she killed the king, which isn't really true. And she says that, like, the king's empire is over and slaves are now free people. So it's great. Good times.
But, like, I feel like, too, that her saying, like, I killed the king, I don't think that was a power move. I think that was a protecting Dorian move, because, like... Oh,
yeah.
You know, because if she said, like, Dorian killed his father, then it would sort of put a damper on his reign, we'll say.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think she did it for him. So she walks back up to the castle, and as soon as she's, like, inside the front door, she just collapses and starts to cry. We go over to Elid's point of view now, and she has lost track of time. She did feel a ripple through the world, but she doesn't know what it was. I can't remember if you said it at the beginning, but she's been captured by her uncle.
Oh, I didn't.
And is in, and she's in a dungeon. So Vernon actually shows up and tells her someone will come to clean her tomorrow, and now that magic is back, he will see what is in her/their bloodline. And she begs him to let her go, but obviously he's not going to. And then a beautiful young man named Cormac shows up. And I was like, who the fuck is Cormac? But if you remember, when Aelin saved Aedion, she pretended to be Cormac. So Cormac is Arobyn's, like, business partner, but he must have had some kind of magic, because now there's a Valg prince in him, and he was just like, Aelin said that he ran away or something, but I'm thinking Aelin probably sold him out to the king. That's my guess.
Yeah.
But I only figured that out this read, because I was like, who's Cormac supposed to be? Like, they're saying it like we should know who this person is. So I had to Google it.
Good.
So that's who that is. So he starts to make her, like, relive the terrible things and memories and shit, and she ends up vomiting. But Vernon tells him she'll be no fun if he doesn't, like, leash it in now. And Vernon tells Elid that she's going to be given into his care after the incision and a few stitches, and that the informant who sold Cormac out said that he liked to play with young women in Rifthold. So he sounds like a terrible person.
Yep.
We go to Manon's point of view now, and she is on her way to bathe and then sleep forever, because that was her plan, and then it got derailed. But she notices when she gets to her room that Elid's scent is stale, and she's like, what the fuck? Where is she? So she immediately runs downstairs, and her iron teeth and nails are out, and she barges into the kitchen, and she asks where Elid is. But they just say, like, some days she works in the laundry, so maybe she's there. So Manon runs to the laundry, and the head laundress says she hasn't seen her, but maybe the cripple had gotten what was coming to her. And Manon, like, loses her shit and scratches, but, like, iron nails this woman in the face.
Good.
And, like, good. Yeah. So she starts running again, but a woman from the laundry yells out to her and runs after her, and she tells her that one of the laundresses is, I guess, sleeping with, I assume, a guard who told her that Aelin was locked up, and she doesn't know which dungeon she's in, because there are 3, but some of the laundress girls were trying to help. Which, like, I love that these human women were like, we're gonna go save Aelin. Like,
I know. And, like, especially since Aelin was like, no one's gonna care, no one's gonna notice I'm gone, and, like, all this. And then these, like, human women were like, no, not cool, we're gonna help. And I love it.
And I agree completely. I'm like, because I think we even ended last week and she was like, no one's gonna come for her, nobody cares. And, like... Yeah. These human women were going to do it, and I just love them.
Yeah. And they were straight up going to die trying.
Yeah.
But it's
and
nice.
Never would have known.
No, but it's nice that they were going to try.
Yeah. So Manon goes to run to get the 13. We go over to Aelid's point of view, and... obviously a time jump happened because 2 servants are there to clean her. And I thought Vernon said tomorrow, but whatever. So she obviously tries to fight them off and she begs and she's like planning in her head to make a stand and like force guards to kill her. And 4 guards show up and tell her the prince is waiting in the catacombs. So 2 of the guards grab her and she's like freshly cleaned and just in a robe, and like her robe falls open, so the other guards like just start laughing at her, which is just like so awful and so traumatic. Even if none of this was traumatic, that would be traumatic in itself. But then iron nails shove through the throat of one of the guards that's laughing, and then in the eyes of the other one. And then Manon looks to the Manon looks to the 2 that are holding Aelin. And they grab their weapons, but she just says they're already dead men. And she's so fast, she ends up like snapping one neck and she pulls the spine out of the other man.
Which I love. I love it so much.
Like spineless? I'm like, they are spineless. I love it so much. But then she says, we need to run. Then we jump over to Manon's point of view, and we kind of go a bit back in time. So we kind of go back to where, I guess, Aelid's point of view started, and we go back to where Manon's point of view just ended. But we know, I guess it's nice that we know Manon is going to find Aelin when we're at this point.
Yeah.
So Manon, she knows, like, it's going to be a statement to save Aelin. Like, if everyone's going to know that they did it. And it is a statement to do all this. So, like, she's aware of that. And she's like, it's fine. And the keep is also in upheaval because they've all heard that Aelin killed the king. And Dorian is the new king. And obviously magic being back is a big deal.
How did they hear that so fast?
I have no idea.
Like, there's no texting, no phone calls. They have to use, like, friggin' carrier pigeons. So, like, how did everyone find out so fast?
Maybe the Val can long distance call in their heads.
Maybe.
Like, I don't know how they found out so fast. Maybe it's the next day.
Maybe.
Who knows? So she ended up finding the 13 and she ordered them to get ready and get their wyverns. A strange female voice is telling Manon to hurry as she's like running towards the dungeons. And Manon, Astrid, Sorrel, Vesta, and the green-eyed twins go into the first dungeon. And they just start killing people. And they're like looking around for a lead and killing everybody they can. There's no sign of a lead, so Feline and Fallon, the green-eyed twins, stay there to kind of just like check again, make sure they didn't miss her somewhere. And everyone else goes to the second dungeon. They don't see a sign of her there, so Vesta stays to kind of do the like look around again to see if they missed anything. The third dungeon is above the catacombs. So we're like, cool, makes sense. She's definitely there because they mentioned the catacombs.
Yeah.
So Manon races for a lead, and Astrid and Sorrel stay back basically to kill anybody in their way. And the female voice she heard earlier is telling her to go faster. And she kind of figures out that, like with magic back, she thinks that this is a goddess talking to her, which is interesting.
Can I just...
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't understand the flip that Manon has made. Like, I'm happy that she's made it. But, like, she literally went from, Elite, I don't care about you, I'm gonna, like, manipulate you so that you don't think your room is safe anymore, and you're gonna stay in my room so that I can keep an eye on you, and I don't 100% trust you, and blah, 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 and, like, putting her in a dangerous situation of, like, you're gonna have to find out what's going on with our clan of witches, you gotta pull your weight, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't, like, she doesn't care about a lead, and then she leaves, and now she comes back, and all of a sudden she's like, I care about a lead.
I think she cared about a lead earlier, too. Like, even when she put her in danger, I think she was just using her because she's part of them now, and she was the only one that could. But, like, I think she cared about her before now. And, like, she sees her as a witch. But it is interesting that, like, she sees her as a witch and she's like, I'm gonna burn the world to get her back. And then the other witches were, like, tied to tables and, like, it was their idea to go, but they're not enjoying themselves now. So, yeah, it is interesting. Yeah. So Manon obviously finds a lead, and obviously the scene that we just saw happens, and then she slices the chain that is on Elid's feet, and she can hear Val coming towards them from the catacombs, and Astrid and Sorrel are like, I guess the catacombs are in one direction, Astrid and Sorrel are killing everyone from the entrance, so, like, they're trapped, kind of. So Manon starts to feel some regret for Astrid not trusting her with the story, and for the yellow legs that she let be bred, and for Elid, because she, like, kind of thinks they're doomed and they're all fucked, basically.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, it's, like, a whole bunch of things that have come into place to make her have feelings. So Manon says they need to battle their way out, and then Kaltain is in the doorway, which is interesting.
Yes.
We go over to Elid's point of view, and Kaltain tells Manon that she can't outrun this many, and Manon asks how long since Kaltain destroyed the demon, and Kaltain just laughs and says a while. And then Kaltain's like, Elid, give me your robe. Like, what the fuck is going on? So Kaltain puts on Elid's robe and covers herself in blood, because obviously there's 4 dead guards there. And Elid knows, like, obviously the plan is that they're going to switch places. But Elid asks her to come with her. And Kaltain just says this is what she was waiting for. So I think it was last week we were in her head for a minute, and she said, like, she was waiting for her purpose to show up, kind of thing, because she was going to burn the world. So, like, this is it. She then basically just digs a dark stone out of her arm and wraps it in a piece of cloak and gives it to Elid, and tells Elid to bring this to Selena Sardothian. And she basically just says, like, tell her it's because they wouldn't let her bring the cloak with her. Because, like, I think in Crown of Midnight, she gave Kaltain a cloak when she went down to visit her because she was freezing. And then later on in that book, Selena ends up in the cells too, because she had scratched Kale in the face and was losing her shit. And Kaltain, I think, made Aelin promise that she would, Selena promised that she would make them all pay. So that's kind of what she's going back to. So I love it. Just love it. Anyway. Kaltain says she has no interest in living after what they did to her, and she thinks that she's going to enjoy this. So, like, I also think she doesn't even know her name anymore. Like, she's, like, so far from who she used to be, and it's so sad. Like, it's devastating what happened to her, but...
And, like, think about it. She was, like, maybe 20. Like, she was not old.
Yeah. And, like, not all she really wanted, but she wanted to get close to Dorian because she wanted to make an advantageous marriage. Like, it's just so sad.
Yeah.
We actually go over to Kaltain's point of view now, and Manon and Aelin have run and are, like, gone. And the guards come to grab her and bring her to the catacombs, and they think that she's Aelin. And she is, like, she's thinking of, like, the horrors under the other mountains, in the other dungeons, I guess, are actually worse. And I don't really remember this. I guess they come up in the next book, the horrors that are under there, but I couldn't really remember them. But she thinks to herself, she's sad that she can't kill those horrors too, because, like, they're all, it seems like, twisted people like she was at one point. Like, it's all really sad. So she thinks then that, like, she is a void without the key. So the thing in her arm was kind of fueling her too. So, like, with it gone, I don't even know if she could really survive all that long anyway. But we get that it's a key, which is interesting. And the Duke said he would add the other soon, and then the third, and she would have been a living gate, which would have allowed the king inside of him, to rule again. So it's a word key. We're well aware.
Yeah.
Like, from this, we can 100% determine. So,
yes.
They chain her to an altar, obviously thinking that it's a lead. And a man brings a knife to, like, her stomach, basically, to, like, put the stone inside of her and breed her. And she smiles up at him and, like, kind of looks a bit deranged. And Cormac, the prince that's inside Cormac, comes in, looks at her, and freezes because he realizes who she is. But she unleashes her shadow fire on them all. And with magic unleashed, like, this is the real thing. So it's what her fire kind of was before. And she says it's her golden fire turned black. So I'm assuming that that means it's just as powerful, just as painful, but, like, it's actually actively burning shit too. Like, it's not just, like, her shadow fire didn't burn anything. It was just painful. So
physically, yeah.
So I'm assuming this is actually burning shit because it seems like it does. So after that, she shoves off the chains and she, like, throws off of her robe. And she even says she does it so that, like, they'll see what they've done to her body, which is just so sad.
Yeah.
There's fire rippling off of her, and she walks to the chamber with the yellow legs and, like, the monster babies. And she burns them all. And she brings it all crashing down around her. And then she, like, burns herself into the breeze. And it's, like, it gives me goosebumps. I, like...
Yeah.
She really turned herself around.
Yeah, she really, like, saved the day.
Yeah. 100%. We go to Manon's point of view now, and they are running, and she hauls a lead over her shoulder because she's like, we need to go faster. Like, once Kaltain blows herself up, we're fucked.
Yeah.
So they get to Astrid and Sorrel, and she yells at them that they have to run, and they need to get to the Eyrie. And there are, like, shudders and booms and screaming, and they feel heat, and they meet the rest of the 13, and Manon is just like, we need to get in the sky now, so they're, like, trying to get the fuck away. They do get in the sky, luckily, on their wyverns, and Morath explodes. And Manon actually, like, turns herself to protect Aelid's body from the heat. as basically a third of Morath just ceases to exist. And where the monsters and babies and Yellowlegs were, nothing is left. So Manon is pretty happy about that too.
Yeah.
We go over to Rowan's point of view now, and Aelin has been sleeping for 3 days. Aedion has taken control of the castle, and he's imprisoned anybody that, like, I guess most of the guards, really, anybody that is loyal to the king. But most actually died, and it kind of seemed, like, purposeful in, like, how Dorian's magic went through. It, like, killed anybody who was bad. I say in quotes.
Yeah.
We also get, like, Kael is also still alive, but he's sleeping too. Rowan thinks back to, like, I guess 3 days ago. He brought Aelin to her old rooms, and Philippa was asked to look after the prince. So Philippa's still alive. We love Philippa. Good.
Yay!
Lorcan actually showed up in Aelin's room when they first brought her back, but Aelin was completely passed out. But Lysandra actually got in his face and stopped him. And he tells her to move out of his way, but she says he forgot to say please. And he says he doesn't have time for this. And Lysandra immediately pukes black blood all over him.
Ah!
And it's one of my favorite scenes. And she just, like, she just looks at him and is kind of horrified. And she says she's sorry. And then she just pukes on him again. And he just stands there. And I'm like, I just love it. It's one of my favorite scenes of the book. Lysandra runs to the bathroom again. I mean, then, because she's very unwell. And, like, she's puking up, like, the black blood and stuff. So obviously it didn't go well in her human belly. But Rowan tells Lorcan he deserved this because he lied about the hounds. And they kind of talk back and forth a bit, but Rowan realizes Lorcan only helped because he saw Aedion go in and realized that it was Gavriel's son. And he basically says, Lorcan says he wouldn't have done that to Gavriel. Like, Gavriel is still his brother, and he wouldn't dishonor him by letting his son die. So that's why Lorcan helped them at all. Rowan asks
which is actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's not the best reason, but it's not a terrible reason either.
No, I appreciate it, and I'm glad he helped, or they would literally be dead. Rowan then asks him why he's even here, and Lorcan says, like, this isn't over, and just leaves. And I'm like, what was the point of this scene? I don't understand.
I guess
why it was
Is it just for us to figure out why Lorcan came back?
To help them, I guess? Yeah. It's just interesting. So Rowan thinks about Aelin again, and she was stabbed in the side, like we knew, and she had glass all in her back, and as soon as magic came back, she just, like, quickly healed herself, but she unfortunately healed a lot of that glass into her back, because, like, she didn't take it all out first. Yeah. Which isn't great. So then a healer literally had to come, open up all the wounds again, pull the glass out, and it was gross. But luckily, she slept through it all. It did ruin her tattoo, though, so, like, he's gonna have to fix that. Rowan also, like, I guess Aedion stood in front of him at one point and was gonna die for him when they were in the tunnel, so he thanked him by giving him a dagger, and he was just kind of impressed that Aedion would give his life for him. And I think it's all for Aelin, obviously.
Yeah.
Rowan is also thinking of, like, Aelin was super reckless merging her magic with Dorian, which we kind of talked about, because, like, how did they know it would work? And, like, Dorian could have also just taken every bit of magic she had. So he's kind of annoyed.
But, like, they also sort of didn't really have a choice.
Well, yeah. Yeah, what else were they supposed to do? So he's kind of annoyed about that, and that is what he's currently thinking about when he looks over at her, and she's just awake. So she says she saved the world and wakes up to him looking pissy, and he calls her reckless, of course. So then she obviously asks about Dorian and Chaol, but they're both asleep but alive, and she's like, Rowan is okay, because obviously he's beside her, she can see that, and she just starts to cry again. So then they explain what happened to each other, and then Aelin needs to pee, which I appreciate. She's like, I've been in this bed for 3 days. I need to go to the washroom. They were both obviously super worried about each other, and they promise that next time they do something like this, they'll stick together. So, interesting. And then Rowan tells her that she makes him want to live too, because she said that to him in your section. Yeah. And he says, not exist, but live. And he says he thinks he spent centuries wandering, but he thinks he was looking for her, which is like so sweet. And then they kiss. And we get Aedion's point of view now, and he's walking into Aelin's room to talk to Rowan, and Rowan is on the bed with Aelin in his lap, and he just, like, slams the door in Aedion's face with his magic, and I love it. So Lysandra's actually nearby, and she has, like, tears in her eyes, and she says one day she's going to find that. And he just jokes with her and says, a gorgeous Fey warrior, ha ha ha. And you're like, so funny.
Yes, hilarious.
So we go back to Aelin's point of view now, and it's actually the next day, and the gold ring is gone, and she has realized that Lorcan actually knocked her out to take it from her.
Oh, that's why she, yes.
Because she was landing softly, and then she got blackness in the head, so interesting. Which I guess she was the only one that was awake, because it was on Dorian's hand, so it's like, he didn't really have to knock her out.
Didn't they say the ring, like, was burnt out anyway?
No, that was the ring on the king's finger. Like, the black ring with the...
my bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was confusing. There's too many rings. But yeah, Lorcan has it. We also get kind of the end of their makeout session last night with Rowan. They were kissing, and she was like, let's go further, and put his hand on her boob, and she ended up, like, arching back, but then she winced because her back hurts, obviously, because it was full of glass. So he obviously put a stop to it, because I think he said he
doesn't want to hurt her.
Yeah, and he wants her to be able to keep up. And you're like, God damn this, like...
Slow burn.
So slow.
The slowest burn.
Yeah. So she goes to Dorian's room now. And we jump over to Dorian's point of view. And he woke up alone, but free. And this is kind of a theme with him. Like, obviously, he had the collar on for a very long time. So, like, there's drama. Yay. Aedion, when he woke up, though, he was talking to Aedion, and Aedion told him that Chaol was alive and recovering. And then, obviously, Aelin shows up because these two timelines meet up. And she asks how he's feeling. And he kind of looks at her and thinks she looks like a queen. And she asks if he's hiding in here. And he says he wasn't sure he could leave. But she's just like, you're a king now. This is your house. Like, we're not keeping you in here. He thinks of his father and how Aelin actually claimed the kill so he didn't have to tell his people, kind of like we were talking about earlier, and he kind of appreciates it. But he asks her if he deserves to be a king after everything he did, and she just says, like, he's the one that needs to decide that. And he asks if she believes what his father said, and she kind of doesn't really answer. She's kind of like maybe I believe it. But she also says, like, they know Parrington's still going to go to war with them. And she says they'll have to figure it out. And him being king is, like, the first step to being able to fight back, basically.
Yeah. I really like that he's like, do I deserve to be king? And she's like, that's for you to decide.
Yeah.
Like, I like that she doesn't, like, placate him with, oh, of course you are, Dorian, don't worry. You know what I mean? I appreciate that about this moment, because it's like, that is not up to her to decide. You know what I mean? Like,
self-worth, yeah.
Yeah. I just liked it.
I do too. He tells her then that she died because of him, and he doesn't say who he's talking about, but we know it's Sorsha.
Yeah.
And I kind of appreciate this moment because, like, she has also lost somebody who was very important to her, so, like, she understands as much as you can understand losing someone you love.
Yeah.
But she tells him, like, it's going to take a while, but he'll learn to endure it, and, like, it wasn't his fault that she died, but he feels like everything is his fault. Like, everything that happened, obviously, with the Valak Prince inside of him, and he, like, he feels like stabbing her was his fault, and, which is, it's a funny thing to say, like, him stabbing her, he feels like was his fault, but obviously it was the prince, the Valak Prince inside of him. And he feels like Chaol's situation is his fault. But she tells him, like, Chaol chose, and the rest of that was, like, his father's fault and the Valak Prince's fault. So, like, it isn't on Dorian. And not that her saying that is going to take away his guilt or anything, but, you know, he probably needs to hear it.
Yeah.
She also tells him she'll be here for him when he's ready, but he's like, you're a queen, you can't be here for me. But she's like, they are the ones that get to decide what happens in the future, and he will always be her friend. And he asks what he does now, and she just says, you light up the darkness, which I love.
Me too.
We go over to Chaol's point of view now, and he just woke up, and he's not feeling any pain, which is good. Dorian is next to him, and the collar around his neck is gone, and Chaol just starts crying, which I appreciate. I love that his closest relationship and the person he loves the most is his best friend. Like, I do love that about him.
Yeah.
I will give him that. I love that there's no, like, he's not afraid to love Dorian that much. I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Dorian says he thought that Chaol was dead, and tells him that Aelin saved the city. And obviously him too. And Chaol thinks to himself, like, he can't feel his legs. And the healers that actually lived through Dorian's explosion-y thing said that Chaol shouldn't actually be alive because the king broke his spine in a few places. And apparently Rowan actually healed some of it. Like, he healed some of the higher up ones, but the lower breaks in his spine were too complex for Rowan. So because Rowan only knows how to do, like, battle healing.
Battlefield, like...
Yeah, he's not a healer.
Like, patches stuff up on the battlefield during a war.
Exactly. So Dorian tells Chaol that, like, all of this, like, his, I guess, spine needs repairing. And tells him that he should go to the Torre Chesme because it's his only chance to walk again. Obviously, Chaol doesn't want to leave Dorian, and he says he can't leave him again. And Dorian says he never left him. And you're like, he did. Even if you're okay with it and you're going to forgive him for it, he 100% left you, and Aelin wasn't wrong to be pissed at him for that.
Yeah.
Nezrin shows up then, and she's the new captain of the guard, which is fun. And she's actually she's the first ever woman in the King's Guard.
Good.
And I love
not
it.
Good, but, like...
Well, I
I'm
love it
glad
for her.
that they're breaking boundaries. But, like, I wonder who appointed her. Was it Aelin? Because Dorian's been, like, locked in his room for 3 days. Well, and Aelin's been out cold, so it must have been Aedion?
I think Dorian has decided it, but I don't know when.
Yeah.
I don't know. The timeline is a bit messy here. But Dorian's just like, she's the captain of the guard. And I guess Kale's just like, oh, that's
okay.
That's my job. And I guess, like, realistically, like, it's kind of shitty the way he says it, because obviously Dorian's just there. I mean, Kale's just there, like, I guess he doesn't want me to be the captain of his guard anymore because I can't walk, which is, like, a terrible thing to think. But Dorian actually tells Kale that he is now Lord Kale Westfall, the king's hand. And he says, like, if he has to be king, Kale has to, like, put the work in, too. Fair.
Yeah.
Dorian tells Kale that, like, Nezrin is going to go to the southern continent with him, and...
Like, how can she be the captain of the royal guard if she's not there?
Well, he's going to have to choose someone else, I guess, in her absence. But, like, that's her indeterminate position, but she's going to take a leave.
She's going to work for a day, and then she's gone.
Yeah, basically. Kale then is actually funny and tells Nezrin that he broke his promise since he won't be able to walk out of here.
But,
which I find hilarious. But she obviously bursts into tears, and she says she thought he was dead, but she prayed that she, Aelin, had somehow saved him too. And obviously she did. And she says that they'll go together and fix this. And I don't know, this book, I guess this is the end of this book, and, like, Tower of Dawn is the next one with him. But it's, like, it's an interesting look at all of this. Like, I'm not sure how somebody who is actually in a wheelchair or disabled in any way would feel about the representation in the books. Because, like, even the way they kind of talk about it is kind of a bit iffy. Like, but then again, like, there's magic, so everything is different. I don't know. It's a weird way to say it, like, to fix it. Because, like, obviously in this world, if you had an injury like this, we don't have the magic to be able to, quote unquote, fix it. Anyway.
Yeah, and, like, and also I would think that people, well, I would assume that people with spinal injuries that are in wheelchairs would say, well, I don't need to be fixed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's why...
It's like, I'm fine the way I am.
The wording is a bit odd, and I wonder if it's an issue, or if I'm just like I obviously can't make a call on that. I just found it a bit odd.
Yeah.
And it's something, like, when we do read Tower of Dawn, we'll obviously have to get into, too, because there's obviously his journey is in that book.
Yes.
Anyway. She says that he's a lord now, so she doesn't expect anything, because obviously in the last scene they had together, they kind of were like, you need to live so we can, like, be a couple. See where a relationship could go. And he says, like, she probably doesn't want him now that he's a quote-unquote crippled man. And she says, like, she's not that shallow or fickle. And he basically is just like, then let's have an adventure together. And it's kind of, I love it. It's kind of like a sweet beginning to their relationship and journey. Yeah.
Their situationship.
Yeah. Really, though. You shouldn't get back with your exes, kids. Elite's point of view, she is on a wyvern and she is crying. And she's thinking about, like, how much Kaltain did for her. And she has since changed into some flying leathers, and she has the stone in her inner pocket, and she's like, I am going to get this to Selena Sardothian, even though I have no idea who that person is. But, like, Kaltain saved my life. This is what I need to do for her. We're like, good.
Yeah.
Big fan.
This is the thing, like, Elite has no idea that Selena is Aelin.
It's so funny.
It's, like, and it's sort of infuriating, because you're like, because her plan of attack is, I'm going to find Selena, give her this key, and then I'm going to go find Aelin. And it's like, you're heading towards the same thing.
I know. I love it, though. I love it.
Like, just find Aelin and you'll find Selena.
Yeah, it's my favorite. Manon can kind of tell that that's why Aelin is crying. So she says, like, Kaltain knew what she was doing, and it wasn't just for Aelin. She did it to free herself, too. And obviously she took out a third of Morath. And Aelin is like, what are we gonna do now? And, like, this is kind of a bit funny, but not really. But Manon is just like, we're gonna go back, and you're gonna fuck right off. But, like, kind of in a nicer way. But, she's basically like, you need to go north to Terrassen, and she tells her, like, the king is dead, Aelin is alive, and, like, this is the first time Aelin is hearing this, because they couldn't tell her before. And she's aided by Aedion, and Manon also tells her that Lord Ren Alsbrook is also alive, and he's in the north, too. So, like, Manon is giving her, like, so much hope in this moment. And Manon even says the word hope to her, because, like, they had a conversation I think we talked about last week of, like, both of them are hoping for something, and this is what Aelin was hoping for, so it's, like, perfect. Yeah. Aelin asks then if, like, things are gonna get worse, and Manon's just like, yeah. But she has to find Celaena. So Manon.
So does Manon doesn't know that Celaena and Aelin are the same person either.
No. Manon tells her that, like, here's a bag, here's some money, here's some knives, here's some daggers. And she also tells Aelin not to tell the queen about her witch's blood. And Aelin is just like, I don't think it's such a bad thing to be a part witch. But Manon, obviously, and Aelin have a bit of an iffy past. Aelin asks then how she can repay her, but Manon says it's a debt already owed. So I think this is the third part of her life debt towards Aelin.
Okay, yeah.
Manon then removes her shackles, and it's, like, the first time she's been out of shackles since, I guess, 10 years ago when magic went away, basically. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
So hard. And Manon says when war comes, Aelin should hope to not see her again, because obviously they are still on opposite sides. But Aelin says she hopes that she does, and then Aelin begins her journey home. She, like, starts walking north by herself.
I love how they just drop her off in the middle of nowhere, and they're like, okay, bye!
And they're just like, go north. And I'm like, does she have a compass? She can't read. Like, what is she doing? I don't understand.
But I feel like a lot of people in other places in the world and in other places in our country automatically know how to find northeast, southwest.
Yeah.
Because it's, like, ingrained into their, like, direction.
Yeah.
So they all know it.
The other thing...
Like, I know nothing about, apart from the fact that I believe I live in the west of our city. I think I'm in the westish end.
Yeah, I'm in the east.
And you're in the east. That is as far as I can go with it.
Do you know, though, it's not our fault. Because in a normal city, it's a grid. And it is a north to south, west to east doojiggy. Whereas where we are, the roads started as horse paths. And then they just paved them. Yes. And they are just, like, willy-nilly, wherever they are is where they are. And there is we don't have, like, blocks. We don't have normal shit like that.
No.
We are, like...
No.
No.
And, like, it's funny because we actually have roads that, like, start in one end, and, like, when they were first made, like, maybe the road was, like, twisty and turny, and that was all called one road. Mm-hmm. Then, as our city grew, they, like, started making roads next to it, and roads, like, perpendicular to it, and whatever, and now there's, like, a street here, and then there's, like, a street right across from it, and then there's a street, like, half a kilometer down, and that street has the same name as the street a half kilometer up on the opposite side, and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah. So, It's not our fault that we don't know directions. But also, if you put me in the middle of the woods, I wouldn't know where, like, I don't even think people who know where north, like, in like a city street setting, if you put them in the woods, I don't think they'd know. But, like, in this world, there is the star of the north or whatever to guide you home kind of thing.
I guess, but what do you do in the middle of the day?
I don't know. You
Sit and wait for night, and then you travel at nighttime?
I'm assuming that Manon pointed her in the right direction and said, walk that way. And then every night she can look up, find the star, and be like, okay, I'm going in the right direction. But, like, other than that,
and, like,
I don't know.
But, like, so they gave her money, but, like, they didn't give her any food? Like, they're leaving her literally in the middle of nowhere with no food. Like...
She has a pack, but I don't really know what's in it. Maybe there's a tiny bit of food in there. I have no idea.
Maybe.
It's wild.
Anyway, yeah.
We go back over to Aelin's point of view now. And she's with Lysandra. And Aelin gives her a box with a ring in it. And it's just, like, such a cute moment. Because Lysandra's like, are you proposing to me? And then she opens it and sees a ring. And she's like, no, but actually, are you proposing to me? And I just love it. But Aelin actually tells her that there's a land in the north that could use a lady, but it is full of ghost leopards. So, obviously, that is a good match for Lysandra now, because she's a shapeshifter, and she could, like, become the ghost leopard's
a ghost leopard
queen, as well as the lady of this land. But she tells her there's a leopard on the ring because of the ghost leopards that are there. And Lysandra asks about, like, I guess the style of the ring. There's a key above it. Also, side note, the fucking jeweler. Does he ever sleep?
I know! Jumpins.
But the key is to remind Lysandra of who holds her freedom, which is now herself, which is just, like, so meaningful and nice. Yeah. But Lysandra says that, like, Aelin is out of her mind. And Aelin says she can appoint her a lady with Evangeline as her heir. But Lysandra thinks no one will ever serve her and no one will take her seriously. And she says she doesn't deserve this, but Aelin disagrees. And she tells her that they'll learn how to do all of this together. Because, like, obviously, similar to Chaol and Dorian, like, Aelin doesn't really know how to be a queen either.
Yeah, but she's like, she really does think that because she's been a prostitute, nobody will, that she'll have no...
She's not necessarily wrong either. Like, this world is very harsh on children that were sold into it. Like, it's not like she chose... Not that, obviously, this world is different than ours. Like, sex work is work. But in this world, they're sold into it and then, like... fees upon fees are piled onto them. So it's different. So Dorian shows up to Aelin's room after, and he, earlier that day, signed a decree freeing the conquered kingdoms from Adarlan's rule. So that's ideal. Good times.
Yeah.
We enjoy that.
Great job.
Aelin cheers him to a new world, and Dorian answers, to freedom, and it's, like, just a sweet moment. We go over to Manon's point of view, and the Duke and Vernon, unfortunately, survived from that blast. And a good number of guards and servants ended up dying, as well as 2 covens, and obviously Aelin died too. Obviously she didn't, but they think she did. Yeah, most of the covens were actually out on a training exercise, so that is good and why they didn't get injured. Good for Manon. So she's in the Duke's chambers now, and they're, like, all super pissed. It's going to take months to repair all this, and their plans will have to be put on hold. And also, all of, I guess, the Duke's men are searching everywhere for a woman and the stone she bore. So, obviously, they're looking for the word key that was in Kaltain. And Manon knows that Aelin has it now, but she hasn't told anybody. Like, she didn't even tell her 13 about it. So, like, that's interesting. The Duke tells Manon then that her grandmother is going to be there in 2 weeks, and war is soon going to start. and kind of like then dismisses her. And Manon goes over to Vernon and tells him that even though she's dead, speaking of a lead, she'll never forget what he tried to do. And he just says, like, she can't touch him. But she says Aelin is alive and has a score to settle. So that's, like, interesting. And she also, like, digs her nails into his shoulder so that he's bleeding and stuff, which is good times.
So, like, here's the thing. Vernon is just a terrible person, right? Yeah. He's not infested.
No, he's just a piece of shit.
He's just a dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that he has found his people in a room full of demons.
Yeah. Like, that tells you a bit about yourself.
Yeah, it's pretty darn bad.
Yeah. Astrid asks Manon what now, and Manon says they wait, and Manon asks her what happened to the man in the cabin, and Astrid just says, like, he was old, and she likes to think that he just, like, walked out into the woods and died, and, like, that's how he would have liked to go, but she says she never found the body. And then Manon asks what it was like to love, and Astrid kind of, like, goes into a whole thing. She says it was like dying every day and being alive. It was joy and pain. And she tells her that she loved her witchling too. And, like, when she's done talking, she says she's surprised Manon isn't telling her, like, witches shouldn't feel things kind of thing. But Manon says things are changing. And Astrid just says good. They should change because they're immortal, and it would be boring if things didn't. So, interesting.
That's a good view.
It is. I love Astrid. We go over to Aelin's point of view now, and she tries to go to Elena's tomb for, like, a last look, but there's too much rubble. So she goes back to her room, and she's in her fae form, and Kale and Dorian are waiting for her, and Dorian tells her that she looks good. I love. Just big fan.
Is it bad that my first thought about the tomb being rubble is like, what about that door knocker guy?
Well, she even thinks about him, and she's like, maybe he's still down there, or maybe, like, he's finally been released from, like, if it was destroyed, he'd be like, he's not that he's he's sentient, I guess, but it's not like, I don't know. He's been there for ages. Yeah. So she says with Parrington and Maeve breathing down their necks, she is going to make Kale an official ambassador for Terrassen, and his trip to the southern continent, like, he needs to get their alliance so that they'll come and help in this battle. So, like, she is tasking him with that. And obviously he's going to try to do that for Dorian as well. So, like, he has both of their support. Dorian asks her why the Eye of Elena didn't do anything before now, because Kale was wearing it for months when she was in Wendelin. But she says that Elena actually told her that courage of the heart is what, like, makes it work. So when Kale gave Dorian time by going after the king, he was courageous, and that's why it worked for him then, which is just kind of funny to think of, like, any moment before when it would have been useful for it to help, like when Sorsha died, or when he left Dorian, he wasn't all that courageous. That night, Lysandra ends up sleeping in Aelin's bed, and Aelin's a bit disappointed that she can't sleep with Rowan, but it is cute in the morning when Aedion comes in to get them up, but Lysandra turns into a ghost leopard and scares him away. But obviously, they're getting ready to leave. So they get ready, and Aelin goes to see Kale, and Nezrin asks to see it. So she shows Nezrin her fire, and Kale says it's lovely. And I'm like, oh, he's trying to get over it. He's trying.
Not be a dick.
I guess. So yeah. She leaves Nezrin basically a rose of fire, which sounds awesome, and I want one. She also gives Nezrin the arrow that she got in the first book, Throne of Glass. She went to a religious ceremony, and a kid walked around as a representation of the goddess Diana, and gave her a golden arrow. So she gave it to Nezrin because Nezrin is a sharpshooter, and she figures she'll appreciate it more. She says goodbye to Dorian, and it's kind of sweet. She says, like, she'll always be there for him, and he thanks them all for helping, and, like, they agree to send each other books, and, like, it's just a sweet moment between them. As she's leaving Rifthold, she's, like, she holds Rowan's hand, and music is playing in the Royal Theatre, which is, like, a big deal. Because, obviously, it wasn't before the king died. We go to Dorian's point of view for, like, 1 second, and he actually wakes up in the middle of the night, and, like, he checks his neck to make sure the collar is gone, because he has nightmares constantly about it. And he thinks he, like, already misses Aelin, and Chaol's leaving soon. But he gets up and he goes to the balcony. And he sees a giant beast and their rider on the glass wall. And he waves to her through, and, like, in his head, through the darkness, a name starts to echo. So, like, he remembers Manon, and he remembers her name. So, interesting. We go to Manon's point of view now, and she kind of thinks she doesn't know why she went to see him, but she thinks, like, he was there, and he remembered her, and he doesn't have a collar anymore, and it's a changing world, and perhaps a changing 13, and she hopes they all survive it. We go to Aelin's point of view now, and they're traveling to Terrassen, and it's, I guess, been 2 weeks, and she thinks of like, the word key, because she has it on her, and how Lorcan is eventually going to end up coming after them. And Evangeline is with them, but, like, she's keeping up good, and every night she sleeps with Fleetfoot, because Fleetfoot is going with them, and it's just so cute. But then Aedion tells her it's just ahead, and she's like, wait, what are you talking about? And he's like, once we pass this rock, we'll be in Terrassen. And he says, welcome home. And she can smell the pine and snow of Terrassen, and she realizes that Rowan smells like that, and they both smell like home. Interesting.
Yes. That is interesting.
And then at long last, Aelin Ashriver Galathinius was home. That's the last line of the book. I love it. I love that line.
Oh, I do too. It's so good. I love it.
Yeah, I love this book. So much happens. It ends so hopeful. Like, it's so funny.
Yeah.
The next book kind of just punches you in the face, because this one, one you're like, oh, she's home, she's queen, everything is perfect. Yeah. She has her court is with her dog is with her, like, everything is great.
Yeah, Elite is on her way.
Yeah. Nothing could go wrong.
Manon might not be terrible.
Dorian isn't Valg anymore. Like, everything is on the up and up. I'm sure it'll stay like that.
Sure. But yeah, no, you're right. Like, the next book, like Empire of Storms, it gives you a gut punch.
Immediately. So many of them. Good times.
But, like, so, okay, I understand that most people read Tower of Dawn and this book and the next book, Empire of Storms, like, tandem, right? At the same time. Because, like, as we now know, Chaol is injured and has to go to the southern continent to be healed and to, like, ask for aid for Terrassen and Adarlan. So Tower of Dawn is his story. And then Empire of Storms is the continuation for Aelin and crew. But Empire of Storms actually came out first. So, but it seems like more people would go to Tower of Dawn now than Empire. You know what? If you were not going to do the tandem read.
The only thing is, like, the end of Tower of Dawn, there is a spoiler for the end of Empire of Storms. But, like, if you just stopped before that, and then read, you could stop before that and then read Empire of Storms.
Because the end of Empire of Storms has a really huge cliffhanger that a lot of people found really problematic. And then the fact that she came out with Tower of Dawn next instead of Kingdom of Ash really had a lot of people, like, anxious and, like, up in arms because they were like, I need to know what happens, right? Because there's a huge thing. Which was us, yes. Yeah, no, it was us. But, so, like, I guess in my head, that's why I would want to read Tower of Dawn. But I've literally only read Tower of Dawn once, and then I've been like, nah, I don't need to read that anymore. So I don't remember the spoilers.
Yeah, and, like, I think I may have read it twice. But normally if I'm doing a reread, I won't read it or listen to it. But it'll be interesting to read Tower of Dawn again, because, like, I read it, but I was pissed. I didn't want to read it. Like... Then that's probably another reason why I don't like Kael as much as I don't like him, because I'm like, I was forced to read a book about his point of view when I didn't want to. Like, if it came out and it actually was the two books together, or like part one was Tower of Dawn, Empire of Storms, the first half of the tandem read, and they had another book that was the second half, and that was the book that came out when Tower of Dawn came out, I wouldn't have minded as much, and I might not even hate Kael as much as I do now. But having to wait for Tower of Dawn to come out just to read about a character I didn't like, when the cliffhanger of Empire of Storms, I could not. I hated it. So.
Agreed.
Yes. So yeah, when we do the next books, if you think we should tandem read, or if you think we should separate read, you should let us know. I think we're leaning towards the tandem read because we've only read...
Who wants to hear us talk about Tower of Dawn by itself? True.
Although there are other characters we meet and stuff that I enjoy. I barely remember the storyline though, so like that'll be one that I... And there's lots of important information in it, which is another reason I was pissed at it, because I was like, you're putting all the important information in here, so we have to read it.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway.
And a lot of the characters that are introduced in Tower of Dawn continue in Kingdom of Ash. Like, we meet up with them. So, like, it's not like the book is useless. It is useful, and I don't think it's skippable.
No.
If you haven't read it before.
Yeah. But once we read it once, you can redo the series without reading it.
Yeah.
I think, at least.
Which is what I do. So, anyway. I guess we're gonna say goodbye to my favorite of the series, Queen of Shadows. And we're gonna wrap it up. Bye, Queen of Shadows. So, if you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions for us, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or on Instagram or Facebook at Coffee and Co-Read, and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week we're going to be reading a new book. We're going to be reading Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. We're going to read chapters 1 to 12, so make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.